Okay, here we go.
Good. All right. Hello, hello, welcome.
Give us just a couple of minutes to get everyone in and we'll get started.
Yes. Welcome, welcome. We're just giving everyone a chance to get in. Then we have lots of fun, exciting things today. Lots of tips and tricks.
Okay, we can probably think about it.
All right. Let's see. Comes all over. We've got lots of things going on today. So yeah, I think we'll get started. And per usual, we are recording this. So if you want to go back and look at it later, or if you miss half of it or something, you can always go look at them. I'm Suzanne Nielsen, and Laura is with us also, Laura Cameron, and we are your hosts for tonight for another tutorial sponsored by Zen Yarn Garden. We are just the helpers. We are not the dyers, but we work with the yarn a lot, so we know a lot about it. And what else, Laura? Do you want to mention anything first before we?
Sure. This is our 44th tutorial
44.
Tuesday.
Oh
so
wow.
Roxanne keeps count for us and lets us know every time. And we are excited to be here. This one's going to be a little different than some of our others because mostly Suzanne and I are just going to talk. I brought a few products to show. I think she brought a few items to show. We're just kind of going to talk general theories and tips and tricks. What I was discussing with Roxanne earlier is you don't have to have anything to block. Like, we're going to show you some things that make it a little easier and some things that we like to use, but you do not have to own anything, because blocking can be as simple as washing your finished garment and using a little bit of Dawn dishwashing liquid or a little bit of shampoo or conditioner. So you don't have to have anything special, but we'll talk about some of the specifics.
Yes,
so
we're going to talk, just about some of the things that we use and what the things that we like,
So and then we will do a drawing tonight. So at some point I'm gonna keep my ear open for good trivia questions, and at some point we'll have you open your chats. We have 2 $20 gift certificates tonight. So we'll get there probably closer to 7:20, 7:30. So, and as always, ask questions along the way, either in the chat or you can unmute yourself. And we can be kind of informal here, and we'll just talk about blocking.
Yay. All right, so we're gonna jump right in. There's just so much information out there. So we're just gonna try and distill it down and also let you answer or, ask questions live. But as always with knitting, there's a lot of different ways to do things. So, and I would say like hardly any wrong ways. Some wrong ways. We'll talk about those wrong ways. but knitting is fun, right? So there's no bad things. But so to start with, I thought I would just tell you the way I usually block, and then we'll expand from there.
Can I go back 2 seconds?
Yes.
Okay. Most of you probably know what blocking is, but for anyone who doesn't know what blocking is the process by which you finish the garment or project that you have completed. And it usually involves some method of washing or evening out the stitches and pressing it into the shape you would like it to be. In general, we blocked
that are blocked and not blocked. So I was going to show those too.
Yes.
Maybe we could do that. Should we do that first, maybe?
Sure. That's generally the process we're talking about. And the reason one blocks is because there are a couple different things. One is while you are knitting and you're taking your projects with you all over the place, sometimes they're getting a little bit dirty. They're getting oil from your hands. Sometimes they have oil in the yarn. And so when you're done with it, you want to clean it. Sometimes if there's a little bit of difference in the tension of your stitches, you might want to even out your stitches in the process and make them lay a little bit flatter. And so those are kind of the reasons why one would block. Depending on your textures, if you're knitting something in lace, anyone who has knit lace before knows that when you finish, it's kind of all in a jumble and you can't really see exactly what you have. And then when you add water, it's like magic. Everything opens up and lays flat. So blocking is just the process that you're using to finish whatever you're making. And again, you're adding water or a little bit of steam or something to kind of clean it and help it relax into shape. That was all I wanted to say.
Yeah, that's great. It also makes a difference what fiber type you have. So some things will block way differently than others. My favorite thing to block is the Serenity Silk Plus, because that just like is magical when you block it. And I do have a piece to show, one piece that's blocked and one that's not. I'll show it on the camera too, if it's easier to see, but this particular piece is blocked Serenity Silk Plus, and this isn't seamed together yet, but this is unblocked. Now, let me put it on the camera and see if it looks better here, or share it. Let's share. So this one, I just feel like it really makes a difference when you block it. So this is unblocked, and you can see it does have a little bit of lace. There's some holes. It's not even showing as good, but unblocked, it rolls a ton. And I don't know if you can see, but there's kind of like wrinkles in the piece, and that's just from like being shoved in the bag and not blocked yet. But once you block it, it's just so even and nice. And this is 2 layers, so I'll try and get up a layer if you can see that, but just evens everything out. And that's without, I didn't have to like push my knits around or anything. Sometimes you do have to do that a little bit, but just by blocking it, it really changes the yarn, especially in a fiber type that's like merino, something that has silk in it, I think blocks out really a lot, or the cashmere wools, and then just the spin. So the Serenity Silk Plus is a little bit looser spin than like the Serenity 20 or some of the others that are just superwash merino and cashmere. Those I would say don't block quite as much as the Serenity Silk Plus, but it's still worth it to block them, I would say. All right, so that's a little sample. Here's another, this is Serenity DK. This is a blanket that I just actually finished, unblocked. So I didn't block this one yet because I also have the one that Laura knit and did block. And I just wanted you to be able to see the difference between the two. So I think you can kind of see that. Is that apparent, Laura? Can you tell?
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit.
The deal is that before you block the blanket, the honeycombs are not quite as open, and the honeycomb pattern really opens up and shows kind of that color underneath.
Especially at the edges. So you can see like my edges, like this bottom, you can hardly see it at all. But once I block it, that will all open up.
Yeah, I was going to say the center of the blanket tends to look closer to or more similar because of the weight of the blanket and the fact that it's being pulled on both ends. But yes, it just kind of opens things up and it evens things out.
Mm-hmm. All right, so let's get into some like real blocking techniques and then ask questions as we go. I would say there's like 3 basic blocking methods that are known. The easiest first one is you kind of pin everything out first and then spray it with a spray bottle. So kind of mist it. So that's probably like the least aggressive way to block. That's like maybe the like safest way if you're a little scared of things. I don't know that I've really used that one. I've used it, but I haven't gone back to it. So the method I usually use is the soaking one. So I take my piece and I put it in water, cool water. It doesn't have to be cold, but just cool water, not hot, not warm. And then I let it saturate. So I don't let it soak for very long. That's what I would say. Here you can do the wrong thing. The wrong thing would be hot water and let it soak for a long time, because we're working usually with hand-dyed yarns and it's just gonna make the yarn bleed when you don't want it to. So I would say cool water, and don't let it sit there for very long. So once you like see that there's no more little tiny bubbles coming out of the yarn, that's just the, you know, the yarn or the fiber will trap air. So that's all the air coming out. And once you kind of smush it and you don't see any air bubbles coming out, then I think you're kind of safe to take it out. You could let it sit for like maybe 5 minutes, no longer than, I would say, 10 or 15. Do you agree, Laura?
Yeah, no, I would definitely say room temperature or below
Yes.
in terms of temperature. Never go for warm water. When you put it in, you want to ensure that your garment is fully submerged, but don't spend a lot of time moving it around, because delicate fibers, sometimes if you agitate them, they can felt a little bit. That's another reason we use cool water. Most of Zen Yarn Garden's bases are, well, some of them are superwash, in which case they won't, but you just want to aim for sort of a good rule of thumb for all your fibers is cool or room temperature water. Make sure that it's fully submerged, and you can press it down. I'm just saying, don't, you know, switch it back and forth and get real agitated about it. And you want to let it sit in there. I generally set either a 10 or a 15-minute timer. You don't have problems depending on, I often use some wool wash, and like we were saying before, so we just add a little bit of soap to the sink. There are products that are specifically made for wool wash. I happen to use Eucalan, and I know
I love Unicorn. This is my favorite one.
Okay, there's also Soak, there's Kookaburra, there are lots of different kinds of wool wash. The only thing I would say is do not use Woolite, because despite the fact that it has wool in the name, it actually has a little bit of bleach in it. So don't use Woolite. If you do not know, if you have not found a wool wash that you like or something that you want to use, remember that wool is also a little bit like human hair. It has a little bit of grease. So for instance, when people wash fleeces, oftentimes they just use a little bit of Dawn dishwashing detergent. I would say don't use lemon scented, because that's got a little bit of acid in it. You know, you want to use a pretty plain dishwashing detergent, or I have in a pinch used either a little bit of my shampoo, a little bit of my conditioner, or even a little bit of baby shampoo. All of those are going to be fairly gentle, and they're just going to kind of give the fibers a little bit of a rinse, a little bit of cleaning, and also give them a little bit of softness. And I specifically use the conditioner thing and Zen Yarn Garden has no yarns like this, so that is not what I'm talking about. But if I use yarns or fibers that are a little bit rougher and I want to soften them up a little bit, sometimes I will try a little hair conditioner to do that.
And this Unicorn has a product that's a fiber rinse. Theirs is like a 2-step, so it's like shampoo and conditioner. So they kind of use it, you know, they have the equivalent of that.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, and again, I've never had this problem with Zen Yarn Garden yarns, but I do think about it. If you are using colors together in super high contrast, like you are using a really rich saturated red and you're using a white with it, sometimes the other thing that I will do is when I fill my sink with a little bit of cool water and a little bit of wool wash, I will get those, I think they're by Tide, the color catcher sheets, and I will put one of those in the water with it, just so that if any of the excess dye lifts, it doesn't then settle on the white. So you don't have to do that. In general, I don't have a problem if you're only soaking for like 5, 10, 15 minutes. The longer you soak, the more the soap kind of pulls some of the excess dye particles off, any residue that's there, and then it may deposit them in places you don't want them. So that's the reason why you don't want to forget about it and let it soak overnight. I confess I've totally done that before, and usually it's not too much to my detriment, but don't soak it overnight, come in the next day and say, uh-oh, my dye ran, and then go back and call the dyer, because unfortunately that's not the dyer's fault.
Yes. So that, you know, and especially if you're doing something that has, you know, like this shawl where it has like the white and the dark, especially, you know, dark blues are going to bleed more than other things, and black, of course. And then, you know, the lovely Zen colors that do have the transitions, like the pooling yarns that are just drastically different colors. You just don't want to let them soak for a long time, because you'll lose that contrast. So once you've soaked it, once you've got it soaked, you can take it out and squeeze it gently. And then I like to just roll it in a towel. So I'll take a beach towel or just a bath towel, anything.
A clean towel.
A clean towel.
Dry towel.
And, if you do have if you've seen color in the, whatever in your water, then you might not want to use a white towel. But I haven't had that happen at all. Have you ever had that happen?
I haven't had that happen, but my wool towel is black.
Okay.
So, and I chose that very specifically because I figured if there's anything else in there, because I also use it sometimes when I spin fiber. And if I ever have any lift, it's just going to be on a black towel and I don't care.
Yeah. So I usually just lay the towel against my body, and then I lay the piece against that, and then I just kind of roll it up. Sometimes I fold it in half, roll it, just however, it doesn't really matter. You don't want to be like pulling at this point or anything, just kind of let it, you could lay it on the floor, lay your piece on top of the towel and roll it up. And then you can squeeze a little bit. Again, we're not doing anything like super drastic, like wringing, don't wring, but you can like step on it or sit on it or press on it to kind of get as much water as you can out of it. And then I take it to my, I am fortunate enough to have a guest bed that I use for blocking usually often. So if you have that, that's great. If you don't, then you just need to find a place that you can lay it out and that it will have time to dry until it's fully dry. So that depends on, whether you live in the desert or in, a rainforest or something, how long it will take to dry. But it does need to be in one spot until it's dry, because once you lay it out, you don't want to move it because it'll just undo your effort. I also happen to, early on in my knitting career, I bought a blocking mat, which I love. It's very handy. It's a little bit thick. It has like a spongy on it. Then I know it's not gonna bleed through. You do want to make sure that you put it on a surface, like not your favorite quilt that your grandmother made or that you made or something, because just the moisture alone could harm it, but also it could bleed or something that you didn't want. So make sure you have a surface. I love this because it has a grid. So a grid or something with some kind of, symmetric pattern is really helpful, just so you can, visually like line up on the lines. It makes it just a lot easier. There's blocking mats, of course, out there.
I was just going to talk about that. So I was going to say, again, as with everything, you can buy tools or you can use what you have on hand. For years, I just blocked on the carpet in our spare bedroom. We have no pets, so it was easy enough to do that and nobody would touch it. We have a guest bed that I usually block on now. Or if you are just looking for a flat surface, like a countertop, or I have a friend who blocks on her dining room table. If you have a blocking mat, or Knitter's Pride makes these really cool foam squares, and you can get, I think, like 12 of them for, I don't know, about 20 bucks, 30 bucks. They're just, they also make them for kids, like play mats. They're just kind of rubber. I saw yoga mats. I saw a plastic tablecloth. To go back for 2 seconds, Terry said, what about using a spin extractor? I do know people who sometimes spin out their knits in the washing machine, but not actually washing it, just using the spin cycle. The spin cycle. I have not done that. I usually prefer to just kind of squeeze it out gently and then put it in a towel, but I do know people who do. And I would say just, beware of delicate fibers, because that's not entirely a delicate cycle.
And it might depend on, if you're just doing one piece at a time, it's hardly worth it. I would say, just wringing out or, putting it in a towel is plenty. But, maybe if you have like 3 or 4 sweaters that you're doing at the same time, you might spin them, I would say. But yeah, so once you have all the water out, then it's time to like lay it out. And there's a lot of different ways and different preferences that we have of how you lay it out. My preference is to lay it out and get it kind of roughly put it in its shape. And then I love flexible blocking wires. So this is the other product that I'm going to push today. This is Little Sister blocking kits, blocking wires. They are flexible blocking wires. So they're super thin. I do also have like the thick regular wires, but these are, if you can see, they're just really, really thin and they're super flexible. So I use these like for anything because I can do like scalloped edge, I can do straight edge, I can do curved edge, I can do anything with them. But again, you don't have to have these. Other things that would work, you know, even depending on how long your piece is, like a long needle, like a long chagu needle is metal and has a metal wire in it. You could use that. Or nothing. So once you lay it out and you have it planned, the reason I like the blocking wires is that I thread them through and then I can adjust more and then I pin. The most annoying thing is to like start pinning and then say, oh, wait a second, I want to move like all these pins. But that's why I think blocking wires kind of help you get it more shaped. That's why I kind of lay it out as much as you can and then start working. Start at one corner, one edge of your shawl, and then like work your way out to the rest of it. I don't have those pins, but I think Laura said you use those that like
I use a couple different things.
Okay.
Most
Like
blocking kits come with T-pins.
Yeah. So
You
I
can
use
also go to the
T-pins.
hardware store and get T-pins easily. They're super inexpensive.
The thing you do want to make sure is that they're not going to rust or something, but
yeah, I think, I don't remember I can't remember which metal is the preferable one.
Yeah.
But you just want to keep an eye on them. And if they start to look at all rusty, definitely toss them because you don't want that coming off on your knitting. The other thing that I use quite a bit is I use my Knitter's Pride knit blockers. These are kind of, they look a little bit like combs almost in various sizes. And so if you're trying to lay out certain sections or get your corners perfect, they can help there. I will be honest, I don't use my blocking wires super often. I know Suzanne loves them and she does a lot of shawls, and so she likes to block them into precise shapes. I am a much more imprecise blocker. Generally, blocking can be as simple as pushing it out into shape. So even for shawls, for instance, for the shawl that's behind Suzanne, it was a lot of garter stitch. It wasn't a lot of lace. So I didn't need to like pin it out to open it up. I just needed to wash it and then lay it flat sort of in a triangular shape. So I don't think I used pins or blocking wires for that. It just depends how precise you want your shape. I don't generally use pins or anything for, say, blocking sweaters. Usually I wash them and lay them out and lay them flat and just kind of press them into shape. Hats, it depends. If it's just a beanie, usually I wash it and I just press it out flat. I have seen people do interesting things like blocking tams on plates. You can put various size salad or dinner plates into your hats if you're trying to make them kind of flat on top.
Or balloons, right?
The other thing I will say is, and I will give you the caveat here. So I have a pair of sock blockers. These are available in a variety of places. They can be metal, they can be wood. They're generally approximately the size of your feet. Most times they come in small, medium, and large. These were relatively inexpensive. I think they were about $19 or $20. I will be honest, I use these mostly for photos and not for actually washing and blocking my socks. I do wash my socks. I just don't put them on the blockers because often I'll do a full load of socks and I don't bother to think about that. But they are useful if you want to take pictures, if you want to see how things fit. I have a small foot, so I have them in size small, but actually I've been meaning to get them in mediums so that I can block for my husband as well. And that's also, again, how I take pictures so that you can kind of get some close-ups and see how they look. So these again are a maybe nice to have if that's what you're doing. You certainly can block on them. I have also seen mittens and gloves. There are mitten and glove blockers. Again, if these are things that you knit lots of, maybe you want them, maybe you don't. I also just, actually with a lot of my socks, I wash them and then I just lay them flat on my blocking boards to dry and just press them into shape.
Okay, I'm going to address some of the questions we've had in the chat. First one was about, they saw was about softener, fabric softener. I think it would be okay to use. I don't use it, but have you ever used it, Laura?
I don't
No,
either.
I
My
think
assumption
someone
is that as long as it's okay for delicate clothing, I mean, I think they recommend that you can even use fabric softener for babies. As long as it's
Yeah.
okay for delicate fabrics, I think that's fine.
Yeah,
Um,
not necessary. I wouldn't say that.
yeah,
it's
not
necessary.
necessary at all.
I often block with nothing, just water, you know.
Yeah,
If
you
it's
can't, like a
not
lot of my
dirty,
hats, I block with
yeah.
just water.
Yeah. So yeah, and then so yeah, this is Anne asked about like if you're blocking a hat or a cowl, how do you block it so that you don't get like a crease on the side, because if you have to lay it flat and it's not something that's flat. So there's a couple of different things you can do. I think the easiest is probably like roll up a towel and put it like on the edge. So I have a towel here. So if you want to block this, you would get it wet, lay it flat, and then sometimes I just scooch it. Maybe I should here put my camera on so you can see it a little bit better. All right, so when I block this, I haven't blocked this in a while, so it's already starting to roll again. But I would lay it out, and then at the edge, at the top or the edge, I don't like line it up perfectly. Sometimes I just like make a little oval on the top. And that seems to help so I don't get like a crease here. Also, you could roll up a towel and stick it here, or like a dowel rod or a giant knitting needle or anything that's like a little bit round, just to keep that from being a flat thing. Usually I find if you don't like, press it, that it's going to be okay. It won't show like a crease, but if you do find you're getting creases, then those are a couple techniques that you can use to not get a crease.
You can sometimes you used to be able to find them at Pier 1 Imports, which I know is not open anymore. Sometimes they had glass heads or styrofoam heads.
Oh yes.
In a pinch, you can blow up a balloon and stick it inside your hat. I also
or if you have a mannequin, you can block on.
Yeah, you can block on the mannequin. For a cowl, if it's not too heavy, I mean, I don't always recommend hanging things because they stretch, but for a cowl, if it's just with like one skein of fingering weight, it's probably not going to stretch that much. Theoretically, you could, if you have one of those hangers with like the little clips, you could kind of clip the sides and just let it hang, which means it wouldn't be folded so much. And then the other thing, not so much for blocking, more for photoing, but I've seen people say you can always crumple up a little bit of newspaper or a little bit of tissue paper and put it in to kind of shape if you want to put something that's approximately head shaped in a hat, you could do that.
You can do that, yeah. I see Maureen says she's an obsessive engineer, so am I. And blocks you, so when you pin things out, if it looks like if you're seeing it loop and you want a straight edge, that loop will stay. So you do want to make sure that you have enough pins that the edge looks straight. That's why
and that's
wires are nice.
That's also a spot where you could use a couple of these along the hat brim or along the cowl brim, where you really want it to be kind of a crisp straight edge.
Straight, yeah. So yeah, so straight edge. So the biggest takeaway is when you lay it out, make sure it looks good when it's laid out. If you see that your lace is not like opened up and looks nice, then just mush it around. The other thing that's like totally, useful to do sometimes is to put either blocking wires or pins in the middle of your knitting, which some people don't think about as much, but I have this shawl, not shawl, whatever it is, it's my Mountain Gods. And it does have this lace section, and down the middle, there's just stockinette. So I do sometimes run blocking wires down that middle just to get like straightness in the middle. And then I, do the outsides kind of too. Oftentimes too, if you have a straight edge, you might not even, it might be worse to put a few pins in than it would be just to put like 2 pins in the side and then like make it go straight across. So just kind of, you have to like be a little flexible, and depends on what you're blocking. But yeah, don't be afraid to not use any pins if it looks better.
Well, and you brought me to another thing, which is when you're starting with a big blocking project, it's often easiest to start towards the center of the project and work outwards.
And work out.
If you start at the outer edge, you could end up having to move everything multiple times. So if you sort of start at the center and then work your way outwards, kind of do a few on one side and a few on the other
like to go to
side.
sleep, I guess, huh?
Yeah. So yeah, lots of different, I know we're giving you like all over the board here, different things.
Yeah. So feet will naturally block your socks. That's what Ellen said. That is very true. I never block my socks. I do wash them, but I don't do that. I don't put them on the blockers all the time. And then it looks like, hang on.
Good question about sweaters. So when you knit a sweater, I mean, it depends on how you knit it, but if your sweater is knit in pieces, then for sure, block your pieces before you seam it. And that like makes sure that then when you're blocking, each piece is flat, which makes it a little easier. And it will allow you to get your sleeves like the same length. So you can, block your sleeves the same length, say your sides the same length, so that when you go to do your seaming, it will be a lot easier. And everything will look a lot crisper and neater. But then you seam it, and then after you've seamed it and you've done that first initial blocking, then the next times you need to wash it, then you just lay it out flat like you would a sweater that you buy off the rack that you don't put in the washer and dryer. You just like lay it flat to dry. So after that first initial blocking, it kind of sets things. And then after that, you don't need to block it, quite as aggressively or as much.
Well, so let me just go through a few things. Linda has used a styrofoam head model. That's great. Britta says for her cowls and hats, sometimes she positions them before they're dry, which works pretty well. So you would lay your hat or your cowl out right when it came out of the sink, and then you might go back a few hours later and just kind of squish it 90 degrees so you don't get the creases. So it kind of does partial. And in that case, I would say, sure, you can move it while it's blocking. I wouldn't mess with lace because it won't hold its shape until it's dry. But if you're looking to not get a crease, that makes sense to me.
Yeah, and I would say just, you can move it if you need to shift it like that for drying, but just don't like take it and put it in your dresser drawer or something.
Yeah, no.
let it dry when you're
Elizabeth asks, do sweaters or shawls need to be blocked with each washing? I would say you should probably reblock with each washing, but you do not have to wash every time you wear. A lot of our shawls, we wear them on the outside of our clothes, so they don't get dirty as often. Even our sweaters, you can wear them multiple times between washings.
Wear an undershirt or something,
Yeah, but every time you go to wash that garment, particularly if it's lace or something else, you will need to at least kind of stretch it or press it out into shape. You can decide whether you want to go back and actually put all the wires through it again, but you will need to do something for it to dry. And oftentimes that just means I throw it on the mats and press it into shape.
Yeah, it won't be, I always think it's not as hard the next times. Maybe
Maureen, you are totally ahead of me. I was going to go there next. So I'm going to step back for one moment. Remember at the beginning that Suzanne said there were 3 methods for blocking. The first method was to put it down on your board, kind of spray it and give it a little mist and let it dry in shape. The second method was to do what we call a full wet blocking, a full washing, which is submerge it in water, get it really wet, remove excess moisture with the towel and then lay it out in the shape you want it to be in. The third potential way to block is blocking with steam. Now, if you have a steamer, that is one way to do the process. You can also block with a steam iron, and I will go over some of the caveats on that. I don't know, do you have a steamer, Suzanne?
I have a steam iron, so I do that sometimes, but my my preferred method is the wet blocking. I think it, in the long run for me, steaming it takes a little bit more time, and so I think it's the time factor. Once you get it wet and lay it out, then you just leave it for a while. With steaming, it just takes a little bit more effort because you still have to lay it out, and then you have to steam each part of it. And we'll go into different techniques like Laura said. I don't know. Do you want to take that, Laura, or?
Sure.
I can either way.
So, and Gwendolyn, I will get to, do I block all of my finished items? I'll get to that. So let me go through steaming first, and then I will discuss when do I really block?
Yes. Should we pause? Let's pause and do a gift certificate first, Laura.
Okay, I can do that. So tell me one thing, and I will take the fifth person who has a correct answer. Tell me one of the things we discussed that you should never, ever do while blocking.
Good one. Put it in the chat. Put it in the chat, guys.
Yeah, sorry, I meant in the chat.
Yes.
Let's see. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Janice Mara, soaking in hot water. That was definitely, I saw that. Hot water, I see ringing, I see stretching too much. All of these are correct answers, but Janice Mara, you are the winner of the $20 gift card. And you can contact Zen Yarn Garden. She is in the chat and she'll get you set up with that. I will do another at the end. So,
yes.
So now I'll go back. Sorry, we're a little, we've got so much to talk about.
I know.
So steam blocking. They do make steamers, and they also make steamers that can be done for garments that sort of have a rack that you can lay your garment on. And as I understand it, a lot of the steamers have some kind of chamber to put water in, and then some method for heating it up. Usually they plug in. And I have seen steamers like for garments where it's on the ground, and then it's got kind of it looks like one of those, what they would call a butler, where it's got kind of a structure to drape your, say, sweater over, and the steam goes up through the center of the garment. I have also seen handheld steamers where you can hold them and then sort of direct steam at the edge of your garment. To steam things, usually I set up my ironing board because it is convenient, but you could do it on a bed, you could do it on a counter. You just want to make sure that there is a surface beneath your finished object. And then the one thing that I will say is, and this is my rule for irons, never ever let them touch your knitting. So if you have a steam iron, you can use it as a steamer by putting water into it and then using the steam function, but you always want to either hover your iron directly above the garment that you're steaming, or sometimes what I will do is I will wet a towel, like a washcloth, and put the washcloth down and then put the iron on top of the washcloth. Never put your iron directly to your fibers because, first of all, not all fibers can handle that. And second of all, you never ever want to burn anything. Those are my quick tips for that.
And it flattens. You don't want to flatten your knits, right? Because that's what is beautiful about them, is that they're,
that they have texture.
Three-dimensional texture. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in general, I find steaming is okay if I sort of want if I don't have time to actually wait for the item to dry. Like if I might finish something the night before I need to wear it somewhere,
or if
and
it's
I don't.
Small too, right? If it's kind of small.
Yeah. Steaming to me doesn't give quite as good a blocking experience. It doesn't give me as much of the evening out of the textures or the opening up of the lace as a wet block does. So in practice, I generally do a wet block, but I have used steam block for finished things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with a wet block, you can manipulate things a lot. And with steaming, it's more like lay it out, stretch it out, and then steam, but you're not like manipulating it while it's maneuverable, if that makes sense. As much. You can a little bit, you can steam and then you can kind of press and do things, but yeah.
So I scrolled back a little bit. Britta, you are right. Steaming is great if you have a last minute gift that wouldn't dry in time. I have been known to do that. Yes. And steamers are also great for clothes. It means if you can set up your, if you have a steamer, you can set it up with your regular clothes so you never have to iron again, which everybody has to love that. So Gwendolyn Ivy asked the $1 million question, which is, do you block all of your finished items? So I'm going to be 100% honest here. Here we go. Anything that I make as a sample knit that I send to someone to be photographed always, always, always gets blocked because that is part of my obligation as a sample knitter. Garments for myself, almost always I block them. That doesn't mean that I won't necessarily wear them once before I block them, but I almost always block them because when I'm knitting a sweater, it travels with me anywhere and everywhere I go. So it's not always 100% clean. And it does help things like hems and collars lay flat. If you ever see things rolling when they shouldn't be, blocking is how you finish that. I almost always use it when I knit shawls as well. Honestly, the only exception to shawls is sometimes when I'm knitting a garter stitch shawl, I opt not to block it because garter stitch can be super, super squishy. And when you wet it, it spreads out a little bit more. But like, that is kind of specific to what I'm knitting and how I feel about it when I'm done. And also I might steam block that as opposed to do a full wet block. I will tell you, I rarely wash my socks before wearing them the first time because I'm going to wear them once or twice and then I'm going to wash them. So I almost never wash or block my socks. And hats, it depends on the pattern and the shape of the hat. It lays flatter and looks nicer when it's blocked. Do I always block it before I put it on my head? Not always. That's kind of in my practice. You know, if it's going to be photographed, it has to be blocked because you can tell when people show things that are not blocked because you can see the stitches are uneven or there's a wrinkle or they don't lay flat or quite right. And you will like the way a blocked garment lays on your body better than an unblocked garment.
Yeah, I agree. Same thing with me. If a hats, sometimes cowls I'll just throw on before I block them. You know, but yeah, if you want it to look like crisp and clean and you want to take photos for your Ravelry page or anything else that you're doing, like, then I would say, you know, block it. And it will surprise you. You know, if you haven't blocked before, just try it. And then you'll start to get a feel of what types of yarn will block much better and what types you can skimp on a little bit more. But, you know, we'll also say it just because, you know, this is our job to say, right, is to block your swatches, right, which will give you an idea of how much your knit is going to change. So if your swatch, you know, grows or changes a lot from before, remember to measure your swatch before you block it and after you block it. And if it doesn't change that much, then you'll know that it's not gonna, you know, change drastically, but some things will. So.
Well, and swatches are a great way to test a ton of things. I sort of like this analogy. Think of a swatch as a date. You are trying to get to know your yarn and you're trying to see if it's the right yarn for you or the right yarn for your project. And you want to see how it stretches and what it knits up like. If you're concerned that the color may bleed because it's a really deep, intense color, if you wash your swatch the way you would block your sweater, the way you would put it in with just a little bit of wool wash in the sink for 5 or 10 minutes, you'll be able to tell if the dye is going to lift off of that. You know, it gives you an idea of how the fabric is going to perform when you actually turn it into something. So, you know, it gives you that. It also would give you a chance to try, you know, wet blocking, try sampling the lace and pinning it to see how big it's going to be. Those kinds of things. Even in things where, for instance, like in a shawl, size may not be super important. For instance, if you're not exactly on gauge, the size of the finished shawl might not be that much different, but it will also affect how much yarn you use and how loose or dense you want the shawl to be. So, you know, swatching is great and it gives you the opportunity to also practice your blocking techniques if you haven't done it before, because it's much easier to block a little swatch than.
And it does change. So, you know, if you have the same yarn and you knit it with a larger needle, it could block out more than if you have that yarn, you know, and you knit it really tight. There's just so many different options. And then, you know, like we said, fiber type, like we mostly deal with natural fibers, but even acrylic and like, you know, cotton or some of different, you know, bamboo or tencel or those things, they do benefit from blocking too. And I think somebody posted too, like if you do acrylic, there's a method called killing it where you steam it. And that kind of melts the acrylic fibers a little bit. It's really touchy. You never want to put an iron directly on acrylic. It will melt. I have experience with that. Yeah, ask me about melting
I was
my
gonna say,
mother-in-law's carpet.
I was going to say, I knit a Christmas tree skirt a couple of years ago out of some
Oh.
acrylic that I had in the stash. And I did kill that because it lays nice and flat now.
Yeah.
But I would tell you, if there's one thing that you don't terribly much need to worry about blocking, acrylic is probably the one where if you don't want to block it, you don't have to block it, because acrylic doesn't hold a shape. Like, it's not going with wool, you're going to be able to tell it sort of how you want it to behave when you press it into shape, and it's going to remember that. Acrylic is not going to remember that. It just doesn't have the plastic doesn't have that memory.
It will melt, and that's like a different process.
And there are definitely good uses for all kinds of yarn. I am absolutely not hating on acrylic, because if you're making something for kids or pets or for use outdoors, that may be the best fiber to use. You're just not going to gain a lot by blocking it.
Yes.
Okay.
Right, but yeah, what else?
No, go ahead.
Should we do our final gift certificate?
I should, and I have to think about what I'm going to ask. Do you have a question? Because I don't have one off the top of my head.
Let's see. Well, I'll just ask an easy one here. What was Laura and I's preferred blocking method?
There you go. And we'll take the fourth person.
Oh yeah.
Okay, let me go back. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. JoAnn Lipani. You said wet blocking. That it was technically the fifth answer, but it was only the fourth correct answer. For those of you who said steam is definitely possible, but that is not our favorite.
Yeah, our favorite is just soak it, wring it, not, get the water out and then lay it out.
I just went and ruined it because I asked you all to reply in the thread. But I did put a link to Zen Yarn Garden does have a tutorial post on some blocking tips that we wrote a few years ago. So that kind of gives you an overview about the different methods and some of the things you can use. This tutorial will also be on our YouTube along with all of the other tutorial Tuesdays. If you have questions, you can definitely feel free to reach out to Suzanne and me. And if you have any more questions, I would say we have maybe like a minute or so. So any last minute questions, speak now or forever hold your peace.
Yeah, let us know. Yeah, both Laura and I are on like Instagram and Facebook, probably Laura more.
Facebook, Ravelry.
Yeah. So you can find us, ask us questions anytime, or reach out to Zen. They can get you in touch with us too.
I guess that's it. I don't see any more questions. So thank you. The next tutorial Tuesday, we haven't scheduled that yet. Roxanne may need to be away a little bit in May, so we may end up not regrouping again until June, but we should know within the next week or two. So keep an eye on your newsletters and emails, and we will announce as soon as it's happening. But we might take a short break in May. So thank you all for joining us. And we'll fear not, we will be coming back eventually. We'll we just have to figure out what's next.
Suggestions, we're happy to take suggestions.
Yeah, too. I was going to say, if you ever think of anything that you want, you can email Zen Yarn that you want a tutorial on. You can ask either of us or email Zen Yarn Garden, and we're happy to talk. So thanks for joining us. Have a great night.
Thanks for joining us.